Okay, President Matthew Wesley Williams. How you doing, sir?
I'm well. I'm well, John. Good to be with you, brother. Always.
Always a pleasure. If to let the world know, if I slip up and forget to call him Mr. President, I might refer to him as Reverend Matt every now and then. So I've known President Williams for a very long time.
Yeah.
A special person to us. He actually was one of the pastors at my and my wife's wedding. So he's a very special individual, and it has been a tremendous pleasure to see you in your path and where you are today. So why don't we start there, man? Tell us a little bit about what you got going on and ITC and how good God is.
How good God is. Let's start there.
Yeah.
So I'm now the president of the Interdenominational Theological Center. And so, John, I may slip up and call you JB every now and then.
All good. I say my people, they call me what they call me. You hear me?
All right. So now we met at Florida A&M, of course, after our brothers have been in community as a part of Beta Nu chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha on the highest of 7 hills of Florida A&M. But after Florida A&M, I came to ITC for seminary just about 20 years ago, and now have returned in the role of president. So this is where I am. We're right in the heart of the city of Atlanta, within the Atlanta University Center complex, in the thick of it, here in the ATL. And ITC is a historically Black theological seminary that's been around since 1958, and has been a leading incubator of leadership for the Black church and community for the past 60 plus years. So proud to be in leadership here.
Amen. And if I would have done this better, obviously we try to come on at around noon and try to be respectful of people's time, but I was watching pieces of the homegoing celebration of U.S. Representative John Lewis, and again, with that being in Atlanta and probably down the street from you at Ebenezer, right. I'm sorry to pull you away, but we'll make sure that we get all the rebroadcasts. I'm sure that he would want us to stay in line with our mission and our goal to continue building out and continue getting into any kind of good trouble we see this necessary. So respect to Congressman John Lewis and all the wonderful work and sacrifices that he has made over the years for us. So
indeed.
So President Williams, we're here today talking about a survivor story. You and I had a chance to talk offline about this before this kind of came to fruition, in the sense of us being able to sit down and talk. We were talking through having a discussion about this, and here we are. Yeah. I want to step back a little bit and, just tell us about your journey. And obviously there were some struggles health-wise, and I want you to share a little bit about that. And let's just talk through that and make sure others know that they're not alone in this, and there's a path forward. And obviously you are very blessed, and we are thankful for that.
Absolutely. So there's a long story to this journey, and I should say that we're having this conversation in the context in which it's been uncovered that Black life is under threat and has been under threat in the context of this country. And so I share this story recognizing the significance of that with this backdrop. I am a now 6-year cancer survivor. Shortly before my 38th birthday, I just turned 44. So shortly before my 38th birthday, I went in for to check up on a lump that was in the roof of my mouth that just wasn't going away. Sometimes you get a bump in your mouth that goes away. Well, this one wasn't going away. Went to a maxillofacial surgeon, And he reassured me very quickly, oh, this is nothing to be worried about. We do need to take it out, but we'll come back and schedule surgery. So we scheduled surgery, and turns out it was a malignant tumor, and was a rare form of cancer called adenoid cystic carcinoma, which has no known causes and no known symptoms. The most scientific description that actually successive doctors gave me when I was getting second and third opinions was, this is bad luck cancer. This is what they told me. And so
like if you're gonna have cancer, this is not the one to have.
It's just when they call it bad luck because they don't have any, again, there's no symptoms and there's no causes that they know of. Right. So they say it's just bad luck. It's in your genes is what they said. And so, and it's a very, very rare form. So my journey began with that really unscientific diagnosis, and also began with some frustration with conventional medicine and the way that diagnosis was handled. With that initial surgeon who gave me that reassurance, I was actually somewhat unsettled with the reassurance he gave me that, oh, nothing, this is going to be fine. There's nothing wrong here. And then 2 weeks later, he comes back and gives me a diagnosis of cancer. And when he comes back and gives me that diagnosis, he actually gave me the wrong diagnosis and then had to call me back to give me the right thing to go do research on. And that series of blunders in my initial encounters following that terrifying diagnosis actually stirred some anger, which was probably one of the biggest gifts that I had early on, because what that did from the outset was it gave me a sense that I really can't rely on these doctors to give me what I need. I've got to take charge of my own health. And so I began to seek my own answers, find my own doctors, establish my own team that included what we call allopathic or conventional medicine and naturopathic and so-called alternative methodologies or medicines, to include, traditional Chinese medicine, naturopathic medicine, energy medicine, a lot of different types of modalities that helped me get a very different way of looking at my body and a proactive way of caring for my body, my mind, and my spirit, which are all one, right? They're not,
absolutely.
They're
absolutely.
not, they're not separate parts of ourselves. And so it took me a while to determine what course of treatment I would take. But the first thing that I did was, what I was about to say was the first thing I did was I worked on, after talking with one of my naturopathic physicians who said to me, he said, Matt, food is medicine.
Yes.
And so within a day, I shifted from being an omnivore to being a vegan, and raw vegan at that. Just made that shift within a day. But now that I say that, what I recognize was that was not the first thing I did. That was not the first move that I made. What I realized in retrospect is that what preceded the shift in food, which is medicine, was a shift in mindset. I recognized very early on that I had some spirit work to do, and that I had a deep inward sense that some of what was showing up in my body was very much connected to what I had been harboring in my spirit, in my emotional life. And that the healing, if there was going to be any healing to be had in this process, it would have to be a holistic healing, not just a healing of my body. And so that involved me reckoning with my relationship with my mother, for example, who had passed, over a decade before that. But getting into forgiveness of my mother, of others that I had been harboring some resentment and anger around. It meant really going back and surfacing some old stories and narratives that I had been carrying about myself. One of which is this old idea that brothers in particular typically carry, which is you are only as worthy as your performance. You're only as valuable as what you can produce. And so before I could take on any kind of sustainable practice or discipline that would facilitate any healing in my body, what I had to do was to reckon with the question, is my life worth saving? Right? I had to reckon with the question of worthiness. And one of the things that God gave me in that early period was this mantra: I am safe and created worthy. It's not something I have to strive for or work for, that I inherently am worthy of my own attention, of the discipline, of the effort, of the work that I'll have to put in to make myself the priority to facilitate the kind of healing journey that I envision myself going on. That was the basis. Yes, sir.
Can I ask you a question? Sorry to interrupt. I don't want to break your stride.
Go ahead.
But this is vitally important, right?
Yeah, it is.
Easy enough for you to be able to call your man JB, or talk to the wife, or reach out to your brother or your sister or anybody in your community, and they will tell you without even you having to ask how worthy you are, right? How important you are, how loved you are. What was going on? And I'm asking for your sake and for other brothers' sake. Yeah. What was going on in that time that you would not believe what somebody like me already knew about you, right? I know how much we love you. I know how worthy you are. I know how important you are to so many people. Where were you where you even had to have that discussion with yourself?
Yeah, so the stories that we carry in our spirits are not just about the immediate folks that we have around us. We carry social scripts. You know, we carry theological scripts that we get from, you know, our spiritual communities, our churches, and that sort of thing. And so, especially when it comes to we whose skin has been darkened by nature's sun, right, and call ourselves Black men, there's a long story in this country that's really driven by extracting labor and resources and performance out of workers, and we have been some of the original workers in this place. There's a long kind of narrative in social script that basically says, and this is just true of Black men, that, you know, you got to get out here and get it, because what you are and who you are is connected to what you do. Right.
Yep.
And what not only what you do, but what you can accumulate. Right. So that's a social script that none of us are immune from. I don't care how much your people around you love on you. But even in our family systems, sometimes, whether it's our children, our spouses, you know, our siblings, our parents, people can rely on us so much that we tend to believe that we're here for others only, right? And so if you have kind of a servant spirit, you can kill yourself serving other people. And part of that's driven from this idea that I've got to prove my worth by what I contribute to other people. The healing for me has been and continues to be derived from this idea that just as I am, if I don't lift another finger, I'm still worthy, right? I'm still valuable. And my value is not based on solely what I contribute to others. The thing is, I can then, if I operate from that place that I am inherently worthy, inherently valuable, then what I contribute to others is not what I use to prove my value. It's an expression of it, if that makes sense. Wow. It's a subtle difference, but a huge distinction that makes all the difference in the world in terms of the stories that we tell ourselves about our own worthiness. And so with that being the ground level, from which I began the journey, that made it possible, Jon, for me to be able to keep up a practice of, of eating in a way that uses food as energy and not entertainment, right? That got me up to exercise even when I didn't feel like it. That basically, health is a stance of rebellion. And I got to a point where at some point it even wasn't discipline anymore, where I basically said, look, the more research I did, the more I learned, the more I was taught by a variety of teachers. I learned that, the food system is trash that we operate in here in the United States. In fact, Wendell Berry said it like this. He said, we have a health system or a medical system that thinks nothing of food, right? Yep. And then we have a food system that thinks nothing of health, right? And so it leaves us in a position where, again, we're deemed users of food products that are for entertainment, but not for energy and nourishment. And so what I've said, is that my keeping up this discipline around food has been a stance of rebellion where, look, I'm gonna die one day of something, but I'm not gonna help y'all kill me.
Right.
Right.
I'm gonna do my part. That's right. I'm gonna do my part.
That's right. That's right. So that again, that was kind of a basis. And from that continued process of learning, I came to understand, this cancer journey as what I called healing school. At the level of the mind, the body, and the spirit. And after some time, what I did was I engaged a variety of types of physicians, did my own research, changed my eating practice, also developed practices developed spiritual practices that helped me regulate my own nervous system, unearth those old narratives, and stayed in doing work with my therapist. And then, learned about a number of other kinds of methodologies through, traditional Chinese medicine and other forms. And only after probably about a 6 to 8 month period did I decide then to take on a traditional medical approach, which was a radiation treatment. But by the time I got to radiation, I was in the best shape of my life with cancer, and had enough, I think, under my belt to be able to use the doctors as opposed to them guiding me around, right?
Right.
So then after that treatment, and let's be clear, conventional medicine in this country is really not healthcare. It's not a healthcare system. It's really kind of a detection and treatment system. That's how Dr. Terry Mason would describe it, a detection and treatment system that can, at its best, do trauma triage and keep you off the brink of death, but really doesn't have the capacity to help us know what it means to be well and healthy, right? And that has a lot to do with the fact that medical education in this country spends probably about 1% to 2% of its course content in the education of physicians on health, on nutrition, on wellness. The rest of it is spent studying how to manage disease and prescribe pharmaceuticals and other kinds of things. And so, it's important that, we take charge of our own health holistically. And then on the other side of that treatment, I had the tools to get myself back to health, because the worst I felt in this whole journey was after treatment. the treatment was devastating, and typically is devastating, whether you're talking about chemo or the radiation or whatever else. It's devastating, and it may kill, the symptoms of the cancer cells, but it also kills other stuff in the process. And we have to have the tools in order to rehab and rebuild our immune systems and our bodies to full health. And thankfully, I had the tools at that point to do that. I should also say that this is not a solo journey. That what I had surrounding me was a village. It was an absolute village, including you, who contributed, who prayed, who took care of my kids, who looked after my wife, who made sure that we had the time to focus on healing as an intention. And so now to cut through, 6 years later, I am in good health,
Amen.
Vibrant, clear, no cancer, and really defying the odds that I was given when that prognosis came through. I did not acquiesce to the idea that I was a recipient of bad luck, because what they were, to their credit, what they were trying to suggest was, Matt, there's nothing you did
right.
to get this.
Not your fault. Yeah, not your fault.
But there was another subtle message in there that said, not only is there nothing that you did to get it, there's another subtle message that says there's nothing you can do about it. And I rejected that. Right. And thankfully, I'm in shape 6 years later as a testament to the fact that we all have our own journeys in our own hands.
How, Matt, how almost immediately did you take a stance to reject that, right? I mean, you spoke about, and you and I have talked about this before in the sense of, again, obviously, what Black Men's Health is holistic, right? We're not talking about just physical health or spiritual health or financial health. All this stuff is one, especially as Black men. We can't be, individuals in one lane, or we will tear ourselves to shreds in another lane.
That's right.
So it has to be this, this holistic effort. So, and it is so interesting that you spoke about how strengthening your mental and your spiritual helped the physical, right?
Absolutely.
So how did you mentally, and even spiritual, how did you decide almost immediately, like, I reject what you're telling me? I reject from the experts where you're potentially guiding me down this path. I'm choosing to, rebel immediately.
Yeah. It could be that I'm a rebel at heart.
Amen. That's always helpful.
Yeah, it is, right? And I'm also a student of history. And not only am I a student of history, but here's another interesting part of my journey is that my first job out of seminary. I was going to get into that. We got to go back. So let's go back.
Because this is the more interesting part of the story right here.
It is, isn't it? So my first job out of seminary was at Morehouse School of Medicine. And I coordinated community-based participatory research and policy education, community education, and advocacy with an organization called the National Black Leadership Initiative on Cancer, right? Working on cancer health disparities around 5 sites. And so we had 16 community-based cancer coalitions within the American South, from North Carolina to Texas. And I was coordinating the work in the South. And so that gave me kind of an inside view on these issues of cancer health disparities, but then also the tenuous relationship that the Black folk have had in this country with what we might call the medical establishment, right? So there's a way in which we have always held, for good reason, a healthy mistrust of medical systems. even as many of us have become medical professionals and educators and other kinds of officials, in the medical sphere, there remains this healthy mistrust, I would say, in most cases healthy mistrust of the medical establishment. In some cases, what that ends up doing is it means that we don't take advantage of the kinds of things that we ought to be engaged in, like clinical research.
Right.
But there's some mixed histories around that when you think about Tuskegee, for example.
Exactly.
But having that background and then coming into conversation with these medical professionals, for one, the blunders of my encounter with that first physician helped me recognize they really don't have all the answers. In some cases, they're making informed guesses. The second thing was that the having that background, working in cancer health disparities, understanding the mixed histories. Also, I came in with a kind of healthy skepticism that said, yours is not the final word. But here's the third thing. I had the testimonies of people I knew. First one that comes to mind, God bless her, is Barbara Smith, who was growing up in church. She directed our high school, our youth choir. Just thinking about her singing brings me to tears. But Barbara Smith, I'll never forget, man. She was diagnosed with a rare form of blood cancer some time ago, and she's passed now, God bless her soul. But if I remember correctly, when she was diagnosed, her doctors told her, most folk who get this have about 6 months to live. She said, so what's the ratio of how many folks live 6 months or beyond? And they probably said something around 30 to 40% live beyond 6 months, maybe less. But here's the point, those numbers may be off. But what she said was, I need a list of the small percentage of folks who survived. And I'm going to go talk to them to see what they did, right?
That's right.
She didn't take their answer as the final answer. What she knew is that there's only one who has your life in their hands, and that's your creator.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
And so what she did was she was proactive, and she lived for another decade after that diagnosis, right? And there were a series of survivors that I talked to, and a series of survivors whose stories I was reading that suggested, you know what? Because they say your prognosis is this, that's not the final answer, right? There are things that can be done, there are ways that can be explored in which people take charge of their own health. So I think my rebel nature, my professional background to that point, my knowledge of history, and the stories of survivors all kind of woven together helped me to, really leverage that skepticism to make some different choices.
That story of survivorship is so critical, right? I mean, I can tell you just so many stories about so many different aspects of my life where that was so valuable to have that fuel in my system, right? I remember specifically talking to somebody about a huge initiative, probably it's 2020, so probably about 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, going into 4 years. And I had this discussion with somebody who had done this 20 years prior. And they were talking, and I did a better job, unlike I'm doing today, of interrupting you. I apologize, but I did a better job of just listening. I was just listening to the person, and he got to the end and he said, hey man, I'm doing a lot of talking. I'm, sorry if I didn't necessarily, give you too much. And I was like, oh no, you gave me plenty, right? I mean, he was giving me a window into how he was successful in making it work. And that's all I needed. I didn't care about the 40 people who told me it was not feasible. First of all, as you and I know, somebody that's telling you it's not feasible, they're talking about their experience, right? So they say it can't happen, it doesn't work. Here's my reality. That's their reality.
Yeah.
And that's good to understand what you might be up against. But to your point, that's not the final word, right?
That's right.
But if you could find those instances of survivalship, if you could find those instances of breakthrough, if you could find those instances of somebody chose to go a different path and were able to make it work, hey, that's encouragement alone for me. That's fuel enough, right? And on days that are tough, I can use that fuel for, just inspiration, for motivation, for physically moving my body to say, let's take a step, get out of bed, get out of your rut, get out of whatever funk that you might be in, because you continue to, where 40 stories were telling you no way and no how, now have multiplied to 80 stories. Let me remember that fuel. Let me remember that there's a path forward,
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Yeah, there's something my father introduced me to a long time ago, which is what he called the diet of the mind, right? When we think about diet, we typically think about what we put in our mouths, but we don't often think about what we put in our minds. That either feeds the best of us or feeds the worst of us. And and what we feed ourselves emotionally, mentally, even physically, impacts the way we see what's happening. And as you know, stress is not just about what happens, it's about the stories we tell ourselves about what's happening, right? It's about the way we react to what's happening. And often, two people can look at the same situation and see completely different possibilities just based on the stories that they have running through their heads and their hearts. So those stories, those, as we would call them, testimonies, make all the difference in the world.
Matt, you obviously, to God be the glory, were gifted with this rebellion, with this history, right? There's a path there to get that history, whether it be community, whether it be education, whether it be, right? You were gifted with these things. What about the young brother who doesn't have that? What if he doesn't have that sound foundation in history? What if he's not a rebel, or has a rebellious spirit? And hey, you talking about a rebel? You already know over here. It's like, no, let's get it, right? I mean, that's me all day long, right? It's like, So I'm good and comfortable in that space, right? But I also know everybody is not, right? So what do you say? I mean, because again, we need young brothers, we need those older brothers, we need them to be in that mindset, to your point, no matter what it is, where they're saying, hey, I reject that, right? I hear you and I appreciate that. And even to your point, Matt, sometimes it's from people that genuinely care about us, but they're telling us their story through their lens.
Correct.
Right? So how do we give somebody that gift of immediate rejection? I am not going to accept defeat. I'm going to blaze another path. If they don't have all the tools that you have, what do we give them? What do we say to them?
Well,
how do they learn that?
That's a good question. Let me also add another piece to the mix in terms of motivation. Hearing my two children say, "Daddy, I don't want you to die."
Yeah.
Right now, if that don't move you, you just ain't got it in you. but hearing my children being motivation for me as well. So I think that's important to add to the mix. Here's what I think is very, very important to say, man, is that I think what's true for me is true for pretty much anybody who's going to face a traumatic moment and recover. No matter how they're wired, what I'm describing in terms of my journey happened in the context of a community that surrounded me, right? And it was not just the internal fortitude that I had. I got that from somebody,
That's right.
Certainly my parents, but also in that moment I had folk around me. So what I'm pushing back against, what I'm getting at is this. I heard somebody the other day use the term the self-care industrial complex. Right? Which is the idea, it really draws from American rugged individualism, that we can achieve these heroic aims if we got enough grit and tenacity and motivation individually. Truth is, none of us do any of this individually. And I think what's absolutely necessary is forums like this, and for us as communities to create alternative spaces for people to hear alternative stories, right?
That's right.
So, I'm not going to attempt to cast a one-size-fit-all remedy or approach. I'm telling my story. But what I do know is necessary across the board is for us to create spaces like this, and to what we've always done, man, is to, and I'm talking about us, what we've always done is we've gone and found young brothers, young sisters who did not have some of the kinds of creature comforts and structures that we had that supported us growing up, and created those structures for them, right? So that there were alternative paths to what they might have been seeing every day, right? Alternative stories that they then gain access to which that they can begin to aspire to alternative possibilities.
That's right.
That's absolutely necessary, man. And it comes in a variety of ways, but I can't say that I'm here 6 years later because I'm special, right? I'm here 6 years later because I had a community around me that supported me in saving my life, and actually finding my life anew. And now I think that's what's necessary really for anybody in any circumstance, to have a community surrounding them to help them do this.
What about I want to talk about a little bit the fuel, right? The energy, right? Like you said, not just, and it's interesting because I had a brief discussion with somebody, which was part of a larger discussion just yesterday about this, in the sense of, how big food is in our life. And that's interesting. You use the word entertainment, right? Because food can mean a lot of things for a lot of people, right? It could be entertainment. It could be community, right? It could be even status, right? I spoke about yesterday, food, what you eat, where you eat, what you can eat, all of that is baked into this construct of food, right? Stress relief, and all kind of things. Food is so complex, right? Talk to us more about your path, you shifting gears, what you're doing now today, if you're still doing that, and how can other brothers just do better in what they're fueling themselves with. Because one of the things, and you're right, that's a whole nother discussion we could have about the mistrust and distrust of the medical community. And we got a lot of work to do there, because, man, me and Pastor Derek McGee are going to be talking next week. And there's some stories that we're going to talk about just in the sense of, just generational, these generational things that can just, the grandmothers and the mothers and the fathers and the grandfathers and the great-grandfathers and just pass down that are just still affecting us today. But one of the challenges with the medical community a lot of times is, I call them white coats, right? And even sometimes, people in academia, sometimes people want individuals to go from 0 to 10. And one of the things about Black men's health, especially I'm having some very challenging discussions about, what we are, right? Because I told a story recently, but it's the same story I told in 1999 in the sense of, well, I told it back in the day, but then when President Obama, or when Barack Obama became President Obama, I used the analogy even more. and specifically I use the White House as an example. I said President Obama could be sitting in the Oval Office looking out the window. He could have all the physical protection, all the physical protection, right? Like security, all the financial security, right? He's the leader of the free world, doesn't really have to worry about much. Has, he had already written a couple of books, keep in mind, right, before he became president. So a lot going there, but also along that time in the office, especially at the end, he's got these two daughters that he's got this beautiful woman that he's caring for and trying to balance the world, right? Literally the world. He's got these two daughters that with the eldest at some point in the very near future is about to be off into the world and somebody else is to care for, right? So he is dealing with some of the same pressures as the person looking in the window, right? So let's say it's a brother just doing landscaping, right? So while he might not be worried about, some of those things he might be worried about, he still has some of those same pressures looking in that window at President Obama, right? How am I paying the mortgage, or how am I paying the lease? I got these two girls also that I got to figure out, one of them's about to graduate, and what are we going to do about college, or are we saving? I mean, some of the same pressures. And I told this story yesterday, which is so interesting, especially this is the layer that a lot of people don't understand. If President Obama at that time could sneak out of the White House, which is probably impossible, but if he could sneak out of the White House and put on some kicks and some jeans and a sweatshirt, and the guy that was doing landscaping that's dealing with some of the same pressures, immense pressures, and a very different social status, socioeconomic status, if he put on some kicks and some jeans and a sweatshirt, and they went out to order some Chinese food late one night at 11 o'clock, and they showed up at the same place, or even in different scenarios, different days, but the same place with the same stuff on, they would be treated potentially they could be treated the exact same, right? So here you got the leader of the free world, right? And here you got a guy doing landscaping, right? And that's not to say that is beneath or anything. That's just to say they're in different places, right? They could be dealing with some of the same pressures. So that is quite the challenge in the continued pressures, that we deal with. Anyway, back to that whole distrust and mistrust and things of that nature. Let's talk more about the food and because sometimes the medical community wants us to go from 0 to 10, and I want to make sure that Black Men's Health is a space to go, hey man, let's get you to 2, right? Two is fine. 2 is better than 0. And if we get you to 2, we could probably get you to 4.
That's right.
If we get you to 4, maybe we'll get you to 6. And 6, man, hey man, you living. 6 is much better than where you were at 0. Absolutely. But sometimes people want you to eat the whole elephant at once,
at the same time.
And it's it's insurmountable, right? It's not even feasible. to. I can't even move because I'm trying to figure out how to eat this whole elephant, and that's not a good plan. So talk to us about food, where you are, and maybe a path where if a brother is not on this vegetarian or vegan or even healthy journey at all, how to take better steps.
Yeah, that's good. And just to say, in my case, man, I'm facing a life-threatening diagnosis, right?
Absolutely.
And so at that point, it was all bets are off. I'm changing, right?
Right.
For me, it wasn't really a choice. It was like, if I'm going to do something to save my life, I'm going to do it. I'm not going to do it piecemeal and leave any wiggle room. So I did. That also affects
everybody around you, right?
Everybody around me. That's right. So now the fringe benefit is, my father is growing wheatgrass and sprouts, and he took on some of my practices. My sister, who got her farm deep from Florida A&M, is now doing much more work in naturopathic and alternative work. I mean, so the whole family kind of learned with me and supported me in that regard. My wife, thankfully, had already preceded me dabbling in vegetarianism and veganism. So she was already ready to support me. But here's what I often say, man, is that, again, our food system is absolute trash. It is not designed to do what food is supposed to do, which is nourish our bodies, right? Our food system is designed to make as much money as possible by chemically engineering food products that addict us because they've been engineered to get at certain pleasure centers in our brain, right? That's what the food system is designed to do. And so what I say, and that includes so-called vegan products. And I'm not gonna call names, but there's a lot of vegan junk food out here. So what I tend to tell folks is, don't go vegan, get nutritionally literate, right? Learn about how the body processes food, right? Learn about your own, you might have food sensitivities and food allergies where someone else might be eating loads and loads of kale, right? Kale doesn't agree with your bodily makeup. So it's not just being nutritionally literate, it's also about learning your own body. But there's certain things with regard to nutrition that really cut across the board. Here's a real simple one: water.
Yep.
Water.
Absolutely.
Right? Water. Thank you. So on average, we should be intaking half our body weight in fluid ounces per day, right?
Wow.
And half our body weight in fluid ounces. And what I heard one person say is that to not drink enough water on a daily basis is like having an unflushed toilet walking around in you, right?
Wow.
Yeah, that's disgusting. And
I was gonna say, yeah, that's disgusting.
It's disgusting. But it's essentially what's happening is that, you know, your body has accumulated waste. And you've got four means of getting waste out of your body, right? You know, urine, feces, sweat, and tears, right? Those are ways of getting waste out of your body. And all of those require water. So a lot of the chronic diseases that we fall victim to have to do with the level of toxic load that is accumulated in our bodies. And that can be addressed with something as simple as water intake. Now, the reason people don't want to drink as much water as suggested is that they have to get up and go to the bathroom frequently. It's inconvenient, right? But it's absolutely necessary. So if we could just pick up our water intake to be half of our body. So I'm 200 pounds, right? 205 to be exact.
You're looking pretty lean and mean over there too.
Thank you, Doc. Thank you, brother. Thank you. This COVID-19 put a dent in my gym routine, but I'm doing my best.
But we safe. We alive. That's right. Amen.
That's right. So that means that I ideally would be drinking about 100 fluid ounces a day. I don't make that most days. I got this mason jar of tea sitting here next to my desk, which is about 30 fluid ounces. If I can get 3 of those in a day, I figure I'm doing okay. And when we say water, that's tea, that's, you know, juice that you might press yourself. We're not talking about alcohol. We're not talking about coffee. We're talking about water, or water derived from fruits and vegetables. So, you know, some fresh juices or tea. But water is a very, very simple thing. Another piece of nutrition is sun, for those of us who can take sunshine in, which provides through this melanin vitamin D.
Vitamin D, that's right.
A very, very important component that regulates other hormones and nutrients in our system. Here's another one, John. Nutrition. We're not just talking about food. Breathing, brother. Breathing, right? Taking deep breaths. Most of us are walking around because we're under stress on a daily basis, especially in this COVID-19 moment. We have short breathing, right? Which means that there's not adequate oxygen getting into all of our body. And the two things that that the disease can't stand is an oxygenated body and an alkaline body, right?
Mm.
So taking deep breaths that get down into our bellies, and taking time on a, say, hourly basis to just consciously breathe, to oxygenate your entire body, to as much of an extent as is possible, that's nutrition. That's nutrition for our bodies. But then over and above those basic things, man, there's some simple things like the increase of organic, or a non-GMO, without the influence of pesticides and herbicides, organically grown, fruits and vegetables and leafy greens. On average, we would say that we ought to be eating about 9 servings of fruits and vegetables on a daily basis. If you're eating 1 salad per day, you've taken care of about 2 or 3 of those servings, depending on the size of your salad. But there's some very simple things that we can do in that regard that just increase our well-being. Part of it, here's one of the big things that I had to do when I came home after making the decision to change my dietary practice, was I had to clean out my pantry.
Yep.
And clean out my refrigerator. Because the biggest thing, probably one of the biggest things that makes a difference in terms of your ability to keep up a healthy practice is what's laying around.
That's right.
Because there's going to come a time when you get the munchies and you need something to eat. And it makes a difference if you got kale chips sitting in your pantry.
That's right.
or you got Doritos.
Yeah.
Whatever you have sitting in there is going to get eaten, right?
That's how it works.
That's how it works. So I would say to folks, get nutritionally literate. Start to get the ABCs of that. There's one very, very important book that actually I would recommend 2 books that would get folks started. One, on understanding the food system that we're a part of, but 2, also understanding the relationship between diet and disease. So one is called the China Study, by T. Colin Campbell, who has the Colin Campbell Center for Nutritional Studies. I would recommend looking that up. But the China Study is the largest and the longest standing research done on the relationship between diet or nutrition and disease. And what they found was that in the world, wherever the so-called standard American diet goes, so also goes chronic disease, right? Yeah. So you could go to a place where, and it was in China actually, where they were doing the study, where they were tracking why in some places where smoking was even more prevalent than it was in the States, the chronic diseases that were typically related to smoking in the States were not prevalent in some of those countries. And what they found was it was a matter of diet, where you had a very small proportion of meat that was being consumed, but the rest of it was plant-based, right? And whenever U.S. commerce took hold, in comes the standard American diet. The acronym is SAD, right? And with the standard American diet came the proliferation, the skyrocketing of chronic disease. Look at Forks Over Knives as an example, as a good documentary on Netflix that shows. But what Colin Campbell talks about is that he calls the chronic diseases, hypertension, high blood pressure, cancer, and others. He calls those diabetes. He calls these diseases of affluence, right? Because the meat, the sugary foods, those are luxury treats in most of the world that poor people typically don't have access to unless you're poor in a place like the United States, where that's really all you have access to, right? But in places where folks are living off the land and are kind of relegated to grains and vegetables and those kinds of things, you don't have those proliferations of chronic diseases connected to sugar, salt, and fat. And so then that's the second book that I would recommend by an investigative journalist named Michael Moss. It's called Salt, Sugar, Fat. And the subtitle is called How the Food Giants Hooked Us. And it talks about the conscious commercial interests that have engineered American food to create addiction. And again, to use food as entertainment to keep people hooked, biochemically hooked. So when folks say, I can't let go of this sugar, there's no shame in that. Sugar is probably more addictive than nicotine. And when you have folks who are under stress chronically, one of the biochemical reactions that sugar does is it helps to repress some of that stress in the temporary sense. So we eat emotionally, we eat ice cream or whatever it is to deal with our stress. That's a biochemical reaction that those foods have been engineered to implement. And the food giants know this. They employ food scientists to do this. And so that kind of knowledge about nutrition on the one hand, but also the food systems on the other, give you access to recognize there's another way to do this. There are even other commercial outlets that are more interested in doing well and doing good by providing good produce while making good money at the same time. So we're not relegated to the food giants, as they're called.
Man. That's a lot. I'm gonna be respectful of your time. I said I would be an hour. So that discussion about water, we're gonna have to get back to that. I raised my cup and things of that nature, but the reality for me is there were two major things that changed my relationship with water. One was fasting, right? Through the church, encouraging fasting at times where there was no other option, and my taste for it changed. And the other one was running. Yes. So in running, your body craves it, not just in the moment, but if you know how to, hydrate yourself prior and then hydrate yourself properly after, it changed that relationship. But before that, I got to be honest, water is blah, right? Yeah. Water is not delicious. And that's something we have to think about and work through and be intentional in getting this wonderful fluid that cleanses us in our systems.
Yeah, I mean, there are two things that anything we put in our body should help us do. One is provide nourishment, right? And nutrition, necessary nutrition, and balanced nutrition. The second thing is detox. Anything that we put in our body should be nutritional, but it should also help us to detoxify. And water covers both of those, right? But also there are a variety of foods that also cover both of those. So, but you're right. I find that my taste buds are different when I'm exercising. I can't drink Kool-Aid if I just ran a mile. Right. Because
something mentally like, oh.
Mentally, but also it doesn't quench your thirst. Right? That sugar actually makes your mouth more sticky.
Right.
Yeah. So water, it does it does the trick, and your body responds in that way. So you're actually getting the real deal. Yeah.
Hey, I'm gonna have you back, man. We got to get into more of these discussions, and you got too much knowledge to be just holding it on that campus. You hear me?
Bless you, bro. Good to be with you, man.
Congratulations again, man. We look forward to your continued trajectory. And obviously, we'll continue to keep you in our thoughts and prayers, Reverend Matt. And
thank you, brother.
Thank you for spending some time with us today.
Yes, sir.
Let's do it again, all right?
All right, brother. Take care, man.
All right, brother. God bless. Respect.
God bless. Yes, sir. Peace.